Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, and here we are with the Haydn Symphony Crusade. And we're up to number 93. And I'm a little bit, I approach this with trepidation because it's the beginning of the end. It really is. These are the 12 symphonies that Haydn wrote for London, his last batch. And he made 2 visits to London. In the second visit, the orchestra was even larger than the first visit. But these symphonies are critical in the history of the symphony because they basically established, what the symphony would be, the launching point for everybody who came later. And for example, all of these symphonies, with the exception of one of them, I think, number 95, have double winds. 2 flutes, 2 oboes, 2 bassoons, 2 horns, 2 trumpets, timpani. Every single one of them does that. And that was like a big deal. The only thing that happened romantically afterwards is that you got, at some point, trombones and maybe a couple more horns. But that was the basic layout of the orchestra. And it really sort of still is. I mean, you can have more of everything, but, you had equal numbers of all of the major wind people and trumpets and drums, without exception. So that was a big deal. You also have, for the first time, the banishment of the second half repeat in the first movement. This is also a very big deal because this is where Haydn's symphonic style, which has always been so dramatic, so narrative, really reaches its apex. Because if you don't have to repeat the second half of the first movement, then you get to go from beginning. Then there's like the exposition repeat, but then straight on to the end. And you can keep developing things, and you can write codas. You can do all kinds of nifty stuff if you don't have to go back to the beginning of the development section and repeat all of that. Haydn had already learned how to make those repeats interesting and necessary. I mean, way back, way back. He'd always done that. But now he says, let me just keep churning up original new things until the very end of the movement. And that was a huge deal. So here we are. Here we are with these remarkable symphonies. Now, number 93 was not the first that he wrote for London. Actually, it was at least the third. Numbers 96 and 95 were composed first, likely before he arrived. And then 93, 94, 97, 90, up that way. So it's like it's always with Haydn, nothing's in the correct order. I mean, the original Haydn scholarship messed up the numbers of everything, and he didn't number anything. So, we're stuck with it. 95 is a wonderful symphony, though. Oh, my goodness. It's in D major. It's very grand in spots. It has a very interesting finale. It has a very interesting everything, actually. And we're going to take it one step at a time. With the exception of 95, all of these symphonies begin with introductions. And the relationship between the introduction and the rest of the first movement, indeed the rest of the symphony, is special in every single case, and often slightly different, or totally different in every single case. They're just amazing pieces. They really, really are. 93 is not as well known as it deserves to be. It should have a nickname. The problem is, as you will hear quite graphically, that nickname ought to be the Fart. Unfortunately, for most of the Victorian era, and probably for most of this era, people are not going to flock to the concert hall to hear the Fart Symphony. I wouldn't blame them particularly. But it's there, and it's funny, and it usually goes woefully unrealized. But I have a solution for that, at least as far as this video goes. Anyway, we're going to start at the beginning with a very beautiful introduction that alternates grand fanfares from trumpets and timpani with gentle rejoinders from the rest of the orchestra. Listen to those gentle rejoinders. Ya da da bum ba da dum bum bum. That's gonna matter. The 3 descending notes, ya da da, like that. That is the main motive of the whole symphony. 3-note sniglets. Now, sometimes they descend, sometimes they make like a V shape, like that, and sometimes they're going to actually go up rather than down. But these 3-note units are really, really important, and they unite all of the movements together one way or another. So that's something that you should keep in mind right at the beginning. Haydn actually, well, why am I getting ahead of myself? Let's just listen to the introduction, shall we? It's quite beautiful, dramatic, dynamic. Something big's happening. Here it is, with the Nicholas Esterhazy Sinfonietta under Bela Drahos. Right? Sinfonietta or Sinfonia. Oh, the Nicholas Esterhazy Sinfonia under Bela Drahos on Naxos. Here we go. Once we get to the allegro, it begins quietly, very, very beautifully, with a lovely lyrical theme. And you gotta listen to the end of the first phrase. Ya da 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 dum bum ba dum ya dum ba dum ba dum. That version of the 3-note descending thing, bum ba dum bum ba dum bum ba dum, like that, ba dum, with the middle note somewhat accented or lengthened or something like that. That is the big deal. And as for the rest of it, oh my goodness, it's a waltz. I mean, the whole movement is very 3/4-ish. It has a waltz-like tempo. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Haydn liked first movements in triple time. If you look at textbooks in sonata form, they will tell you, well, first movements have to be in duple meter, 2/4, 4/4, something like that. It's so nonsensical. You have no idea how many symphonies begin in triple time or in compound meters like 6/8 or 6/4. Or composers love to do that sort of thing. It gives the music an absolutely delicious lilt, and you're going to hear that lilty thing throughout the symphony. Actually, it's a very lilting symphony. It lilts a lot. Let me play you now the entire exposition. It's really, really, really lovely. The second subject too is quite beautiful and also partakes of that descending 3-note figure, da da dum, da da dum, da da dum, like this toward the end of it. So you'll hear a lot of it. Haydn is gently telling us to pay attention to this as it goes on. So here you go. Now, the development does something equally interesting. Haydn, in his development sections, especially in these symphonies, came up with this sort of method where he fastens on a tiny little, almost unnoticeable sniglet of the principal theme and works up a huge extravaganza of orchestral sound based on that tiny little sniglet. And this is one of those things. It really is, because the development section is based on a little motive that goes dum bum ba da dum, and you might think, where did that come from? Well, it came from the end of the first phrase. Yum ba dum bum ba da da dum ba da 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 dum, like that. I mean, it's also in the motion music between the first theme and the lovely little waltz-like second theme that we heard. It's slipped in here and there. But then in the development section, it becomes epic, absolutely epic and emotional and turbulent and full of Sturm und Drang. And it's just this tiny little innocuous thing. It's incredible how Haydn does that. Really, nobody did it better than he did. I mean, because it sounds like an entirely new thing, but it's so logically derived from what's come before. It's just incredibly brilliant. So let me play you the development section, and then we can move on. That wasn't the whole development section, by the way. That was just sort of the first 2/3 of it. And isn't that cool? I mean, it's really, really kind of remarkable. Now, the second movement is the movement with the fart, believe it or not. Yes, the slow movement, the elegant, lovely slow movement. This is a fascinating movement structurally. This and the finale are really, well, all of these next three movements have sort of interesting special qualities in terms of their form. Even the minuet. And this movement is sort of a combination of variations and a rondo. You know, rondo goes A, B, A, C, A, more or less. And, you know, the theme is, oh, it's so beautiful. It's introduced by a solo string quartet. Initially, just solo string quartet, repeated by the full orchestra. And then there's a turbulent minor key episode, which was used by some sort of television commercial. I think it was for Verizon or some sort of, electronics or media or communications thing. I was shocked. I saw this commercial and all of a sudden, I don't know, there are all these people in this like glassed in room and they're all, making agonized grimaces and things and throwing papers around. And I had absolutely no idea what was going on. All I knew is that it was Haydn's 93rd Symphony. So I'm going to play you the whole opening and that minor key episode, which leads back to the original theme. So here it is. And it's really, really beautiful. So then the theme comes back, and it's interrupted by a new episode in triplets with timpani and trumpets, chunk, 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 like that as an accompaniment. And that accompaniment is basically going to persist all the way to the end, just about. And after that thing, the theme comes back again. So that's where you get that kind of rondo-y feel to it, even though there are relationships between all the sections and things. So it has that kind of variation idea because each return of the theme is varied somehow. And it's really, really cool. And then comes the moment. The moment, the fart. The fart consists of a fortissimo blast on both bassoons, unlike their lowest or one of their lowest notes. That's a fart. After the flutes go higher and higher, it's more ethereal. It becomes gentler and daintier and evanescent, and then they just let it rip. And the response of the orchestra is equally interesting because it's the same theme, part of the theme. It does that thing, and it does that, and it obviously becomes clear that that motive is laughter. The orchestra laughs at the fart. It's not just that there's a fart, it's that the orchestra laughs at it. But here's the problem with the fart. The problem with the fart, and I guarantee this is going to be the most exhaustive discussion of the fart that anybody will ever give you. Most people just mention it and expect you to go, ha, 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 oh, that's gross or whatever. No. We are going to dig deep into the fart. The fact of the matter is, most performances are not nearly flatulent enough. They just have, people have no sense of humor. This is bawdy humor. It's what it is. And you might as well just admit it and do it and really do it. Well, the only person who really cut loose with the fart was George Sell with the Cleveland Orchestra on his Columbia or Sony classical recording, which is just phenomenally wonderful. And everybody who knows Haydn and who loves the symphony knows that's the version. The problem is I can't play it for you because there is no way in hell I'm going to get permission. And I will probably get a copyright claim and lawsuits and horrible things will happen to me. But I don't care because there is nothing I will not do in the interests of true art. And getting the fart right is really important to understanding Haydn's humor and the whole sort of, sniffy, dainty classical afflatus that surrounds, the world of classical music that Haydn didn't know anything about and couldn't have cared less about and was probably deliberately thumbing his anus at. So what I have done is I have taken the recapitulation of the theme in its last appearance and everything from the Bella Drahos recording except the fart, which I have very sneakily edited in. So you get the real article, the whole thing, in all of its flatulent magnificence. And we'll see in the next episode if I'm not in prison or if I have a copyright claim against this video, which means I just have to share revenue for views. Who cares, right? It's going to make maybe 8 cents in 50 years. So if they want 4 of the 8 cents, they can have it. But I'm very curious to see just how good these algorithms are that are supposed to look up, copyrighted things. And I'm very, very curious to know if Sony copyrighted Sell's fart. Is it a public domain fart? Or is it a copyright protected fart? That is an extremely interesting question. So without further ado, let's hear the section. And after you hear the fart, listen to how marvelous the orchestral's response is because it is stylized laughter. And that, for me, is what makes the joke so splendid. It really is. It's not just that it's a, scatological bit of musical jokingness. It's actually a dialogue, and the orchestra realizes what's going on, and it's all just so great. Here it is. Well, let's see what happens. I'll let you know in the next episode if I got away with it. I'm kind of curious to find out myself. Things are getting very sophisticated lately, so you never know. Now, the minuet. I love this minuet. Oh, wow, this minuet. This minuet is just unbelievably spectacular. It really is. It has such rhythm, such schwung, and it's based entirely on the three-note thing. I mean, so was the whole slow movement. I don't think I even mentioned that. Da-dum, da-da-dum, da-da-dum. Get that? That's your descending three-note thing with the middle note slightly emphasized. Well, the minuet is exactly, the whole thing is based on it. It's the apotheosis of that three-note thing. It's dum ba dum bum ba dum bum ba da 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 ba dum ba dum bum ba dum da 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 da. Oh, it's incredible. It's amazing what Haydn gets out of this. I mean, I just, and it's never dull. It's never monotonous. It's just thrilling. But it's all based on that little tiny three-note sniglet. And then when the actual main tune of the minuet comes in, bum ba dum ba da dum bum da da dum, with the accompaniment going chuck 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 like this. It's irresistible. I just can't get over it. I really can't. It has such an incredible amount of gusto. Yeah, it's just brilliant. So here's the entire minuet without repeats, the entire A section of the minuet. Isn't that cool? Now, the trio section is formally fascinating, actually, and just as captivating. First of all, it begins with brass fanfares. Da-da-da-dum, ba-da-da-dum, ba-da-da-dum, bum, bum, bum. And these immediately recall the very opening of the symphony, which begins with a brass fanfare, bum, 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 like this. So there's that, which sort of takes you back all the way to the way the thing started. But it's also based, this trio, on that three-note thing. Dum ba da dum da da dum da da dum. It's actually very similar to Clementine. Oh my darling, oh my darling, oh my darling Clementine. It's kind of like that, only it's soft this time and gentle. And then that rises to a climax, followed by this sort of German dance, squeeze box, Oktoberfest, merry-go-round tune. Ach du lieber Augustine, 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 da, 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 da. It does that. I mean, it's exactly that. That's what it is. I mean, it's got some sort of folk derivation or something. But the first half of the trio, these sections in these dance movements by Haydn, we've talked about them a million times, but they basically consist of A, A, B, B. Right? They're in two halves. Both halves get repeated the first time through with the minuet. And when the minuet's repeated, there are no repeats. They just go through. The trio has the same form. A, A, B, B. Well, this does not. Haydn writes out the entire A section so that you think it's repeating, but it doesn't actually. It goes ahead and we get the merry-go-round music. The second half of the trio, which also ends with the merry-go-round music, is literally repeated, but not the first half. So that gives us a very, very almost unbalanced, it's not really unbalanced, but it's hard to describe. It gives the thing much more presence and importance and kind of, there's just a lack of formulaicness about it, which is necessary, really, because, these fanfares come back a lot, and they're very rigid rhythmically, and, then the soft answers based on the three-note thing. And, so Haydn breaks the pattern, and you may not even notice it. But he does, and it's really kind of cool how he does it. So I'm playing you the whole trio with all of its repeats, at least the second half thing, because it's just so much fun to listen to. Really, it's just more fun than we have any right to have. So here it is. And then comes the finale. Now, the finale is also a fascinating movement. It's not one of Haydn's razzle-dazzle crazy finales, although period instrument people play it really, really, really fast. But Haydn doesn't mark it to be played that fast, and this performance is admirable in that it takes a pretty moderate approach to it. It's marked presto, which is very fast, ma non troppo, but not too much. So it's modified fast. And instead of having the three notes going down, the motto in the finale is three notes going up. Bum bum ba da 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 bum bum ba bum bum ba bum bum ba. Little three-note sniglets, this time going up. You will hear the downward version from earlier in the more pensive, quiet second half of the melody. It goes da 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 dum bum bum ba da 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 dum bum bum ba dum da 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 dum bum bum ba, like that. So you do get to hear it. But the interesting thing about this finale isn't that little unifying element, which is, typical for Haydn and quite brilliantly realized. And it's also worth pointing out that Haydn does not keep hammering home that dum ba dum bum ba dum, that descending version of it. He wants us to have sort of a breath of fresh air for the finale, so it goes up the other way. And that really adds a kind of a freshness to the symphony while still, driving home the basic idea. But the interesting thing about this movement is that it is a sonata-rondo combo. It's a sonata-rondo combo that's very, very, how do I describe it? Well, let's put it this way. When you have a rondo, which is A, B, A, C, A, normally, right? If you want to mix that with sonata form, what you have is A, which is your ritornello, your rondo theme, right? Then you have your B section, and then A comes back, and then you have your C section thing, and that leads usually to a development. So B is usually your second subject of the rondo, and then you have your development, and then everything comes back, and you get your second subject where it belongs, and it ends usually with the rondo theme one last time. This doesn't quite do that. This is an interesting take on it, because what happens in this movement is that you have the rondo theme, and the rondo theme is in two halves, both get repeated, so it's long before you get motion music or something else. Then you get an episode. Then the rondo comes back, and it's varied. It's always varied. It's Haydn, everything gets varied. And then you get another episode or motion music that takes you to the second subject, which is a beautiful tune for oboe and bassoon. Ya da 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 dum, ya da 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 dum. It's really, really pretty. That's the second subject, but it doesn't show up until 2.5 minutes into the movement. And the movement itself is only like, well, in this performance, what is it, 4 minutes and a bit? Hang on a minute. 5 minutes and 17 seconds, pardon me. But you're halfway through the movement before, that's the point, before what would be the second theme actually appears. So it's both the second subject of the sonata movement, but it's also an episode in the rondo. And it does come back at the end, which proves to us that it's not just an episode, that it really is, the second thematic complex in this sonata movement. It's just really, really cool. And you need to take it a little bit slower than just crazy presto, because you need to take it in. It's interesting. Haydn builds expectations and foils them. And if the finale isn't a slam bang humdinger, it's one that has more than sufficient substance to make it a really fine counterpoint to a first movement that was a little bit lighter than usual because it was in waltz tempo, right? And this is not. So there's real balance here. It's a beautifully balanced symphony. It really is when you get right down to it. So I'm going to play you the whole exposition through the end of the second subject, and listen to how Haydn actually, in Haydn's rondos, one of the funny parts is, when is the tune coming back? How do we know it's coming back? Well, it begins with dun dun ba da 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 da. So he takes that yun jump jump little 3-note thing and has a little fun with it. And I include that bit as well at the end of the second subject and the return of the ritornello, the rondo main theme. So you get a sense of all of the hijinks and shenanigans going on in the music at the same time. Really, really wonderfully original piece of music. So let's listen to that. And like I said, it's a good 2.5, more than 3 minutes out of a 5-minute movement before we even get to that second subject. It's fabulously original. Here you go. So then everything recapitulates, and there's a coda, a wonderful coda. Actually, it begins with a big sharp bump, a timpani roll, soft solo timpani roll, with all this other stuff happening on top of it. Really, really cool way to end the work. So that's number 93, the first, what really the third, of Haydn's first 6 London symphonies, the ones that he wrote in his first trip to London, which was 1791-92. And something happened in 1791-92. Well, first of all, the French Revolution was going on for a couple of years by then. But what happened in 1791, of course, is that Mozart died. And Haydn got word. You know, the males, this is a very interesting fact, and I know this because this was my field, folks. You know, modern European history with an emphasis in German history. The mail system, the postal system in Germany, was run by a family called Turn und Taxis. The Turn und Taxis family had the monopoly on mail delivery in the German lands. And, you know, they hooked up with Austria through, you know, their correspondence, and also in England. And it only took a piece of mail, that is, you know, letters, money, about 3 days, 2 or 3 days, to get from London to Vienna. They were dazzlingly efficient. And so when word of Mozart's death spread, Haydn found out right away. And it destroyed him. It really did. His diary has, for that day where he got the news, there's only one entry in his diary, 2 words: Mozart stirbt. Mozart dies. And Mozart died. And he never quite got over it, because he thought Mozart was the most brilliant composer that had ever existed. And they were very dear friends, and they understood each other. And Haydn, you know, he was an isolated genius, and so was Mozart in many ways. And it was so important to him to have somebody as a friend who understood what he was about musically and who knew what he could do. And when he got back to Vienna, you know, after he tried to help out Mozart's widow and Mozart's son, and he was promoting Mozart wherever he could. But it was a terrible, terrible shock. He always thought that he was going to die first, and he didn't. He outlived Mozart by 18 years, something like that. Really, really shocking. Anyway, so that's where we are with Symphony number 93 in D major, The Fart. But I'm pretty glad it doesn't have that name, because no good could come of it in the world of classical music. Let's face it. We just have to listen to the music, and it will be our joke between us. So keep on listening, friends. Keep on listening. Listen more. Do it again. Take care.